Welcome to Hidden History of Rock and Roll with your host, Tiffany Scott. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Hidden History of Rock and Roll.
Hello and welcome to Hidden History of Rock and Roll. I'm your host, Tiffany Scott. If you are new to my podcast, I do a deep dive into the behind-the-scenes stories of rock's greatest legends, how they came to be, how the records got played, and maybe some dirty secrets if we are lucky. This is your all-access backstage pass. If you don't know my next guest, he is a music industry legend and someone I adore, my father, Jon Scott. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Tiffany.
How are you? We're doing something new today.
I love this.
This is live.
We are live.
Together.
Amazing.
Not on the phone.
That's crazy. You should be a DJ.
That would be a good idea. So let's talk about your career. Jon, you have a 40-year career in the music industry.
Right.
And that includes icons like Elton John, Olivia Newton-John, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, The Who, Roger Daltrey, Keith Moon, Golden Earring, Johnny Cougar. Let me take a deep breath. And this legendary band called Lynyrd Skynyrd, who we will be focusing on today. So if you want to hear more about Jon and how his career got started in the music industry, please take a listen to my first episode. But right now, we're going to dive into your stories, talking about your time working with Lynyrd Skynyrd.
Great. I love Lynyrd Skynyrd.
They're a fun band.
I loved that band.
Yep, they're great.
They were probably one of the most incredible Southern rock bands there ever was. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Allman Brothers, of course, were great, but Lynyrd Skynyrd had something about him that nobody else had. They had 3 guitar players, a lead singer who came on stage barefoot, and it was nobody. When we first saw him, nobody had ever seen anything like that. And they were signed by Al Cooper to Sounds of the South. I think Al kind of got tired of the North, or being up north, and wanted to explore other regions of the country. And somebody told him that he should go to Atlanta. And so we went to Atlanta, and here's a band working at a small club. And I remember he said, I just sat there and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mm-hmm. And so he signed Lynyrd Skynyrd to his new label, Sounds of the South, along with 2 other bands that didn't make it.
Mm-hmm. And how did you come to work with them at MCA?
Well, my first job with MCA was in Memphis as a local promotion guy, and they, I remember they flew everybody to Atlanta for this special concert for MCA employees and DJs and a small club. They came out with something I've never seen. 3 guitar players, a lead singer who had no shoes on, barefoot all the time, and he might have had 2 drummers. I don't know. It was just an amazing sound with 3 guitars. And so they transferred me to Atlanta, and that's when they had this party. And we invited DJs, all kinds of people to the small club. And the first 2 bands came out he had, and they were okay, but not great. Nobody was really jumping up and down until Lynyrd Skynyrd came on stage. And of course, nobody knew what to expect from Skynyrd until they walked out there with 3 guitar players, and people went, 3 guitar players. And anyway, they started up, and people, it got quiet in there, but quiet because they couldn't believe this band, how good this band was, and how tight they were, and 3 guitars playing. It's like amazing. And so I was transferred to Atlanta at MCA, and I was there. And the last song they did, of course, was Freebird. And I'm telling you the truth, people, and these were executives, standing on chairs, standing on tables, applauding this band, and they wouldn't stop. And they came back. I can't remember if they came back for an encore or not, but probably not. But so when you close with Freebird, that's like a 7 or 8 minute song. And
They wanted more.
the executives of MCA wanted more.
Mm-hmm.
And so Al started his own label, Sounds of the South Records, and 3 bands. And MCA only took one, Lynyrd Skynyrd.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I became friends with them when I moved to Atlanta because I would go to clubs. They were playing these small clubs in Atlanta, and they were just the place is always packed. The club was called Richards. It was always packed when Skynyrd played, and I got to become friends with them. And you know, first time you meet him, every band's kind of leery of a promotion guy. I don't know why, but probably a reason. But we became friends, good friends, and I just loved them. I loved every guy in that band. They were wonderful people.
And if someone doesn't know what a promotion man was back in that day, you think promoter, that's different.
Right.
But what is the definition of a promo man in the 70s?
Well, a promo man was the guy who tried to get records played on the radio, either through having good contact with radio stations. And we went on tours with the bands, and that was incredible fun. But that promotion guy basically was to get records played on the radio, establish relationships with the radio stations, and then go out and tour with the band to make sure that they were doing the interviews on radio stations. And if they had, you know, a big magazine in that town, they wanted to make sure that that Lynyrd Skynyrd would get in that magazine. So we just tried to do everything we could to get records played, interviews, tickets to the DJs. And a lot of times I would have a party before the concert with all the tickets in my hand, knowing who was coming. And I would pass the tickets out then, because I didn't want anybody to leave because I had a bus. Everybody to the bus. Anyway, you know, before I continue, I must say there are promo men, and there's also promo women, and they're often overlooked.
Okay.
And they were a very important part of being a promotion man. I'm not sure why promo man became
The term.
the term, but there's a lot of great women promo people that you know worked hard as we did. And so that's basically what a promo person did for the most part. I mean, there was a lot of other things, but small things, but just basically that was our job, to get records played through relationships or just not giving up on a record and keep going, pounding away, pounding station by station by station. And you never knew when it was going to hit. One station that changed the whole scenario of a band.
What song were the radio stations playing of Lynyrd Skynyrd's that you can remember?
Well, of course, working for MCA was one, Freebird, of course, but working for MCA was kind of a song that people thought they were bad-mouthing MCA Records. And they weren't really bad-mouthing MCA Records. They were backhanding, what's the word? They were dissing on Al Cooper because he told them he was going to make him a superstar, and he's giving him $9,000, and MCA is going to sign you tonight. And so they came up with a song called "Working for MCA," and of course they played that song, and MCA executives were kind of looking around at each other like, "What is that song about?" The last song they did, of course, was "Freebird," and that, I mean, people were kind of partying between these other two bands because they weren't great. Skynrd came out and started, and everybody stood on chairs when they started hearing this band, screaming at the top of their lungs. And these are industry people. You know, you got to be pretty good to impress a president of a record company.
Right.
And they did. They just blew people away that night. About 300 people, maybe 200 people in a club, small club. And so I became friends with them because I lived in Atlanta, and I would go. They were still playing the small clubs when they were first signed. And I would go to Atlanta. I mean, when I went to Atlanta, I would go to these small clubs as well, and just every night knocked you over. They just were that good.
They practiced quite a bit.
Oh, they were like, that's one of the things they did all the time. Practice, practice, practice. And that was one of the things about them. They were so good because they practiced. And that became a thing with them, that they practiced a lot. And that's how they became one of the greatest Southern bands there were. Mm-hmm. But I think Skynrd, for that reason, practiced more to impress people that night at the MCA Records party. But it became one of their things, practicing. Mm-hmm. And they were just incredible. My God.
They were a tight band.
Oh, they were so tight. And like I said, when they came out on stage, you see a lead singer with a hat on and barefoot. You have no idea what to expect. I mean, mm-hmm. Can you imagine seeing Ronnie Van Zant coming out with no shoes on? Mm-hmm. And that's just the way it was. It was a Southern band.
When they first started touring after that show, they did not headline right away.
Right. Well, we arranged for a live broadcast on the station I worked at in Memphis. And it was a live broadcast from Ardent Records, and there was about 50 people in the studio, maybe even less. And they just killed it. I mean, they were so nervous before the show, about 10 minutes to 8, they didn't want to go on. They didn't want to do the show. They said, we're not doing it. We're just too nervous. And we were begging them, guys, this is a live broadcast on a radio station that covers the whole South. You got to do this show. And they decided they would do it. And they were fantastic. I mean, in studio was great. But when they did Freebird, it just, I can't even tell you how long of a song and how great that song was. And when you got 50 people in the audience, it's kind of weird, but when you hear the ending, and you're like small clapping. Right. But
who did they tour with?
The Who for sure. They toured with The Who. And their manager, I think he was having, the original manager was having a nervous breakdown. Maybe, I can't remember for sure, but a guy by the name of Peter Rudge and Bill Kirbishley, who were British, came in and took over management. And they were pretty strict guys, and the band loved both of them. And they became the managers, and they just kind of took over and ran the whole thing of who they're going to tour with. And one of the bands they opened for was The Who. Mm. And because Peter Rudge and Bill Kirbishley were managers of The Who as well. So I remember being at a 60,000 seat venue early on in Oakland, California. And it was at Bill Graham's Sounds of the South, Bill Graham's Day on the Green, that's what it's called. And there were 60,000 people there, and I've never seen a crowd react to a band like that. And they did Freebird, and they did an extra long version of Freebird. And 60,000 people were doing the same thing, basically, that the executives were, standing on their chairs, jumping up and down, screaming. And so Skynrd finished Freebird, and it took about 20 minutes for the crowd to quiet down.
Wow. They
wanted the band to come back. And I remember going into the Who's dressing room, and they were all talking about, let's wait a few more minutes. Let's wait 30 more minutes before we go on stage, because they knew the crowd was still screaming Freebird. And I've never seen that happen before in my life. A band like The Who going, we got to push our show back a little bit.
Wow.
And
how did they feel about touring with Lynyrd Skynyrd?
Well, I think at first they didn't know who they were, and they just said, yeah, come on. But they were managed by the same people. And I think The Who started coming out and watching them because of what they did to the crowd. Mm-hmm. But I think they liked touring with Skynrd. And then Skynrd started touring as headliners. And that was pretty incredible too, watching an audience who've never seen them before do the same thing we did, stand on their chairs screaming. Oh my God, it was like, I can't describe the feeling. If you're in the business and you're there and you see it, it's like, whoa, good God, this band is good.
So their tour headlining was based off just their first album.
Yes, absolutely. But I mean, they did tour, when they first started with other bands, but then people just became so incredibly enamored with this band, they became the opening act. And their last song was Always Freebird. And a big Confederate flag would come up because they were, I would say redneck is a good term.
Right.
But they were definitely all rednecks. I think being from Memphis, I was probably a redneck too, but it didn't have a bad meaning then. It probably does now, or it does now. But they were just country boys with a gift of playing music together. And then so they practiced, like you said, so much that they just became an incredible band like you've never seen before.
So seeing them live, you said, just it was an incredible experience. And touring with them was an incredible experience. Do you have a crazy story that happened while you were on the road, maybe, or two?
I've got one or two. I remember taking a DJ to a party one night in New York, and we walked down the steps. Actually, it was Scott Shannon I took to see The Who. And we were walking down the steps to this, where the party was. And about halfway down, I saw Artemis Pyle go flying over a bar, one of these little, portable bars. And Ronnie Van Zant had cold-cocked him. And me and Scott went, I don't think we want to go to this party. but those guys used to fight and fight each other. I never could figure out, they would fight and they would just knock crap out of each other. And of course, if somebody came up to them and gave them any static, they would get in a fight with those guys.
So they were drinking?
Probably drinking. I mean, we were all smoking. We were all doing other things.
That's what they did.
That's just the way it was. And, but they loved each other, but still they fought. I never could figure it out. But if they liked you, thank God I got along with them. They never wanted to fight me. Thank God.
That's good.
They were just cold cock people. And if you're in a bar with them, forget it. Somebody said something to them, Ronnie Van Zant would turn around and smack them.
If you are enjoying listening to Hidden History of Rock and Roll, please consider becoming a friend of the show on Patreon for only $5 a month. Your support will help deliver more excellent content. Plus, as a member, get your questions answered by the next legendary guest. Thanks for being the best part of Hidden History of Rock and Roll.
Of the craziest stories, I would have to say that I'm going to have to be really delicate here, I think, because I've really never told this story to too many people. But one of my jobs, like I said, was to travel with the band. And most of the time I would get on the tour bus and ride back with them. And one night, I can't remember the city he was in, but one night as we were walking to our rooms, I was walking with Ronnie, and MCA had a thing saying any promotion man who goes out with Lynyrd Skynyrd has to have the key to Ronnie's room, and you have to stay next door to him. And the reason being, there's been fights and stuff going on in his room. So every promotion man said, the president said, everybody has to have a key to his room next door. And if anything ever, you hear anything pounding or a fight or whatever, go into his room and stop it. And so we were walking and he went inside his room and I was standing there and these two girls came up, fairly attractive young girls. And they said to me, do you think Mr. Van Zant would give us an autograph on our albums? I said, I'm sure he would. Let me just check. And I knocked on his door and I said, Ronnie, these two girls would love your autograph on their album. They love the band. He said, sure, I'll do it. So the two girls went in, and I went back to my room. And I was always told, if you hear anything crazy going on, just break in. So all of a sudden I hear banging, swearing, people throwing stuff, like you could hear glass breaking and crashing. And so I jumped I grabbed his key and went in there, and he's beating up these two girls.
Oh my God.
And I went up to him and I pulled on him to pull him back. I said, Ronnie, you can't beat up these chicks. I mean, you can't do it. Mm-hmm. And he said, God damn it, John. These chicks it starts with a D.
Oh, God.
And it was an S. These chicks
They were not girls.
They were not girls. And so the next thing I know, I see two guys half naked running out of the room into the parking lot. And whoa.
Whoa.
These chicks have.
And what did Ronnie do after that?
I don't really remember. It was like I was so shocked that I had to go in. Actually, it was the first time I ever had to go into his room and do that. And I thought the girls were legitimate because they were just nice. And he said, sure, I'll do it. But anyway, that's probably the only time that ever happened with me on the road with him.
Thank goodness.
But it was quite, how do I say it, weird, strange that happened. Because you do that to Ronnie Van Zant, you're going to get the hell kicked out of you.
Wow. I don't know their purpose for that, but...
Well...
I mean...
think about it.
This guy, yeah. It's hard to think about.
Yeah, it is hard to think about. And if I apologize, if I make anybody upset about that, I apologize for what I said.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with any kind of transitioning. Yeah, there's no, but he did not like it, and that was the 70s.
Yeah, that was the 70s, right. Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, there was Quaaludes, there was pot, they didn't do any cocaine that I remember personally, but most everybody drank. They drank a lot. And I think that's one of the things that made them rowdy.
Yeah.
They drank a lot.
And how many years did you tour with them?
I would say at least 3 years. And of course, I remember going to Detroit for a concert for Skynrd, and they were the headliners at this point at Cobo Hall, which is a small hall in Detroit. Mm-hmm. And they had the promoter, for some reason, hired a country singer to come out and sing before Skynrd. And I thought, well, that's weird. And then about halfway through his first song, people booed him off the stage.
Wow.
And I felt sorry for the guy, but they didn't want to hear any country music when Lynyrd Skynyrd's about to play.
Right.
They just booed him right off the stage. I felt sorry for the guy,
wow.
But anyway, so that's one of my fond memories of seeing this guy. I mean, I felt sorry for him, but what can I say?
Right.
You know?
Well, what was it in the when their album started making headway, and they started getting gold records and things like that? What was that? The reaction to that and.
Well, when they were getting gold records, they would usually come to the Universal Tower in Universal City, where our offices were located, and we would take them to there were two sides of the dining room. One side for workers, and the other side for actors and actresses, or somebody from the record label can get in there. And we would usually give it to them back in the back, and they just had smiles on their faces. I mean, they weren't, going crazy, but they just knew they'd made it. And I think they started slowing down the fighting after that, but the first gold record we gave them.
Oh, wow.
But they were just such nice guys. I mean, nice in a way if you knew them. Mm-hmm. If you didn't know them, they might not be so nice, but I was lucky. They liked me.
And did they do any kind of, meet and greet with fans?
I don't remember them ever doing that. Probably after the hotel incident. I know. I don't know. I don't think they did. I don't remember them ever doing that. But they were rowdy. I'm just telling you, they were rowdy.
You have a great picture of you giving them a gold album, and
Ronnie's kissing me on the cheek.
Right.
And it was a sloppy kiss too, by the way.
Yeah.
And they took a picture of it, and I'm going to myself, I cannot believe Ronnie Van Zant just kissed me on the cheek and licked me.
I'm going.
I'm going, there is no way that Ronnie Van Zant's doing that, but they were just so excited to get their first gold album.
Right.
And they knew I was a part of it. And we took a picture, and I love that picture to this day. It's probably still up on Google or somewhere, or maybe you can find it.
Well, yeah. We have it.
You have it. Oh, boy.
We'll be putting that up on the website.
So hanging with the guys, I loved it, and I wish I could have worked with them longer, but I had gotten fired at MCA.
Right. Which is another podcast.
Because I liked a kid named Johnny Cougar.
Right.
And I really, when they went down in a horrible plane crash. And when I was first working with The Who, the manager wanted them on a certain kind of plane. And we were at a party and trying to get The Who to come down, but they were arguing with their manager. They're not going to get on this plane. It's a propeller. It's old. It's rickety. And Daltrey and Townsend were screaming, and I was going, "You guys got to come down to the party." And he went, "Screw the party. We got problems here." And anyway, he finally convinced them that the plane was perfect condition. And so they went down to the party that night. The Who toured on that plane, and I got on that plane, not really knowing a whole lot what went on with all these arguments, but ultimately I was on that plane. I believe, pretty sure, not 100%, but 99% that was the same plane that Skynrd was on.
Right.
Because they had the same managers.
So The Who was using this plane on their tour,
Right.
and the managers then took it and used it with Lynyrd Skynyrd.
That's the way I remember it.
Okay.
And since I had been fired by MCA, I could have been on that plane. Thank God I wasn't. But we lost some. I was actually at the Whiskey. No, I'm sorry. I was at the Roxy in Los Angeles. When we were listening to another band, a bunch of us were listening to another band, and the head of MCA during a song just jumped up and waved, "Come over here, come over here, come over here." And I'm like, what does he want? In the middle of a song, and he said Skynrd just had a crash, and most of them were dead.
Oh my gosh!
And I was like, I was working for another record label at the time, but of course it hit me hard, and I didn't believe it.
Right.
I just thought they got to be okay. And there's many stories about the plane ran out of gas or this and that, but they had problems with that plane the night before, and a couple of guys didn't get on the plane because they were scared to death of that plane. And there's talk about, well, they ran out of gas and this and that. I really don't know what happened, but it was horrific.
It was a sad time.
A very sad time. I mean, when you see a band from the very beginning and they go through these stages of getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and all of a sudden they're just gone. And I flew down, even though I was working for another record label at the time, a bunch of us went to Jacksonville to the funeral of Ronnie Van Zant. And that was just, it was heartbreak. I mean, his wife and kids were there, and everybody was crying, and I think it was, we went to Jacksonville, I think is where pretty sure. And that was just one experience that's ingrained in my mind. of being there when they were having the service for Ronnie. And I'll never forget that. Never.
Yeah, I mean, that was devastating. And, we don't want to end it on a sad note, but I do have a question that came from a dedicated fan for Lynyrd Skynyrd. He just absolutely loves Lynyrd Skynyrd, and his name is Ronnie Wade. He's in Redondo Beach, California. And his question for you is an intricate question. And it starts out saying, over the years, there have been stories about the creation, meaning, and delivery of the Kickin' Lynyrd Skynyrd song, Workin' for MCA, which we did talk about.
Right.
Some say it was the first Lynyrd Skynyrd song performed for MCA executives and sealed the deal and immediately launched their recording career with MCA. Others have said it was a statement to the record company that they were going to pay attention to where their money goes. What do you think the song was truly about, and do you think the band did or did not pay close enough attention to the financial management of their promotion and activities?
I don't think that they paid any attention to that because they had two good managers, and they were the guys that they weren't accountants. These guys, Lynyrd Skynyrd was a rough bunch of guys, and I think they just let Peter Rudge and Bill Curbishley do their thing. But working for MCA, when they started playing, I think it's because Al Cooper had come to Atlanta to find new talent, and he said, "We're going to do a show for only MCA executives." And I think they wrote that song right before the concert. And I don't think it was about MCA. I think it was about Al Cooper. Al Cooper signed them and told them he was going to give them $9,000. And a band around that time, you give them $9,000, they're pretty happy. But I think the song was more about Al kind of screwing them over a little bit. Maybe I shouldn't say screwing them over a little bit, but he only gave them $9,000, and they were happy to be working for MCA. And that song, some MCA people didn't understand, but I'm not sure if I actually understood it either. Why would they say working for MCA? But they were talking about Al Cooper. That's what that song was about. And Al was a legendary producer, arranger. He was in so many great bands. And Al Cooper was definitely a legend in the business, but I think he just got tired of not being able to find bands in the North. And somebody told him to go to the South. And if I repeated that, I'm sorry, but they told him to go down to the South and check out what's happening in Atlanta. Sure enough, he finds Lynyrd Skynyrd. And of course, Lynyrd Skynyrd was named after their high school sports coach. His name was Lynyrd Skynyrd. And I don't think they really liked him. So they just kind of took a play on his name, Lynyrd, Lynyrd Skynyrd. And in Skynyrd, they changed it to Skynyrd. And I think the guy tried to sue him a few times, but it never worked because people say, "You're getting a lot of attention here. Don't sue these guys." But
that's an interesting fact.
But people started going around and interviewing Lynyrd Skynyrd, the coach.
Oh, wow. But so what do you think that song truly was about? Any idea down the road?
I think it was about Al Cooper coming to them, seeing them live at a club, and he said, "I want you to sign a contract. And I'm going to give you lots of money." And I'm not sure when Working for MCA came into it, but he knew that MCA was coming down to do, take a look at the band and listen to the band. It was all about Al Cooper. And in the song they say, $9,000, that's all we could win. But we smiled at the Yankee slicker with a big old Southern grin. And the only person from a Yankee was Al Cooper. So I think that's the gist of that song.
Mm-hmm.
But MCA people thought it was kind of they kind of didn't like MCA, but it wasn't what it was about.
Mm.
People will learn that, later on. But at first, I think the executives were a little like, what do you mean working for MCA? We're going to give you lots of money. You're writing a song, bad song about us?
Mm-hmm.
But that changed. And it was all about Al Cooper. And I think Al Cooper played and recorded with him on the first album. He would go to a club in Atlanta called Richards, and he played organ, I believe, or piano one, but he actually played with him, and he might have gone on tour with him for a few gigs, but he signed him up, Sounds of the South Records. Mm. And he knew he had something on his hands. I mean, all you have to do is listen to that first album and know that you're in a club, sitting in a club and going, good God, who are these guys?
Right.
And no other record company had approached them at the time. And
then later, their album, One More From the Road, or For the Road. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was a big album right there. And you recall, did you work with them on that album?
Oh, yeah. Well, I worked promoting it. I didn't work in the studio with them. Although the album that has Gimme 3 Steps on it, they asked me to edit that song. It's a funny thing. Al Cooper was a great musician, producer. And when they did the song Freebird with Skynrd, it was roughly 7 or 8 minutes long. And he said that no radio station in America could edit that song. If you want to play it, you got to play the whole thing. And Scott Shannon, a DJ who's one of the greatest DJs in the United States, worked at a station in Nashville. And he edited that song. And he got a call and then I called and said, well, Scott Shannon just added this record to his playlist, but he did an edit on it. And they said, tell him to hold on. So Al Cooper calls him up and said, I told people not to edit this song. Play it or you don't. Mm-hmm. And Scott Shannon said, well, if you want me to take off my number one requested song right now, I will do it. And it was Freebird. But he did an edit on the song, about a 3 or 4 minute edit of the song. It was just brilliant. And Al Cooper, I remember Al Cooper called Scott up and said, all right, I give in. You can edit the song, but tell me how you did it. And Al was a producer. I would think he would have known how to edit a song. But so Scott was in the control room and the speakers on, holding the phone up to Al, and Scott would go, edit, edit.
Wow.
And so Al Cooper went, son of a bitch. But after he did it, and that's how the single came out. So it really started climbing up the single charts. I don't think it made it all the way, but that was just a brilliant move on Scott Shannon's part.
It was considered a radio edit.
Yeah. And I was lucky enough. They liked me so much that I'm not trying to brag here, but they liked me, and they wanted me to edit the single "Gimme 3 Steps," which was on the first album after Freebird. Mm-hmm. And I remember going, "Oh my God, I've never done this before." But I went to the studio at MCA and did a really good version, I thought, and I did the edit thing, mm-hmm. And that became I think that became their second single. I'm not sure, second or third, but every song in that album was fantastic.
They trusted you.
They trusted me to make the edit. Yeah.
It's a good story.
Yeah. That is a good story, because if they didn't trust you, you were in trouble.
So what I'm told from my my research on the band is that it peaked. The song Freebird peaked at around number 19. Uh-huh. And
Not bad for a first song
Not bad.
from an album
Yeah, not
of a
bad.
new band from Atlanta,
Right.
Georgia.
Right. And it was a great song. But, the radio edit from Scott Shannon had to be, a brilliant move on his part because it got played more.
Exactly. It made top 40 stations started playing that record. And that's why it made it to number 19, I believe, as a single. And Freebird, of course. I mean, FM stations had it all over the AM stations because they would never play the short version. They always played the long version.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't an easy song to edit either. So Scott Shannon, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
We love Scott Shannon.
I do love Scott Shannon. He's helped break so many records, so many bands, so many artists as a DJ.
Mm-hmm.
And he
And you
became a
worked
real good friend.
Yeah, you've worked with him over the years.
Yeah. And since your middle name is Shannon, I think you think that we named you Tiffany Shannon was because of Scott Shannon.
That's what he told me. He used to tease me and say that I was named after him. He was a funny guy.
Yeah, he was a funny guy, still is, and
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, he was great. And I love going to Nashville because Scott always could pick the hits. He had the greatest ear possible,
Mm-hmm.
and he just break records all the time.
Right.
I could almost go into another episode about Scott Shannon, but we can do that some other time.
For sure. That'll be fun. In 1974, they had the highest charting hit song, Sweet Home Alabama. It was a Billboard Hot 100 hit, at number 8.
Wow.
And Sweet Home Alabama is a little controversial. It has some controversial lines in it.
Right. Hope Neil Young don't remember Southern Man, don't need him around anymore.
Anyhow. And it was in response to...
It was a response to a song that Neil Young wrote about the South and putting down South. And I think Lynyrd Skynyrd wrote that was their response to him.
Right.
And I don't know if they ever made up or not, but
It's been a long-standing beef.
Yeah, a long-standing beef. It was a great song. It was just a damn great song.
Right.
No, I don't know if they did that to just inspire people to check that out or not, but because they were great songwriters, and I think just as goof on Neil Young.
Thanks to Ronnie Wade for that question, and I hope we answered your question, Ronnie Wade.
I do too.
Hopefully, we got all that in there. The burning question that he wanted to know.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'm so lucky. I'm so sad that the plane crashed. But I'm lucky that I wasn't on that plane. And the Who were right. It was a rickety plane with propellers. And I loved working with Lynyrd Skynyrd on the road. They were just the nicest guys in the world if they liked you. If they didn't, you're in trouble.
Right.
But I loved working with Skynyrd because every night Freebird would just tear every venue up. I mean, and that was their closing song.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they even came back for an encore after they did Freebird. But I mean,
Didn't need to.
as a matter of fact, if you really want to know, the album that I talked about earlier that was produced in Memphis is now out as it's an LP or what. It's downloaded live from Memphis, and you can hear the song Freebird on that album, and it's fantastic.
Wow.
And like I said, the best part of it was people loved it. They were standing up, but there's like 20 people in there, and you just hear the polite clapping. I used to laugh because you'd hear 60,000 people clapping.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they were good guys. They were really good guys. They had a great songwriting team, and of course the band was
Work ethic.
great work ethic.
There is an album that
Street Survivors.
Street Survivors.
Yes, and on that album cover, for some reason, they had the picture of the band, and behind them were flames just shooting up in the air, probably meaning they're a hot band and all that stuff. And then the plane crash happened right after the album came out, and MCA was stuck because they had an album with all the pictures of Lynyrd Skynyrd on it and flames behind them.
Oh.
So they had to stop the pressing, come up with a new album. And if you have a copy of that Street Survivors album with the flames shooting up, it's a rare album. Keep it.
Wow, my goodness.
Yeah.
Hang on to it.
Yeah, hang on to that. But overall, I just can't tell you how great it was to work with that band. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget the day in Oakland when they just made The Who wait for an hour because Freebird just blew away 60,000 people.
That's an incredible.
Oh my God, it was like one of the greatest scenes I'd ever seen in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I used to stand on the side of the stage when they do Freebird. It's like, I can't even describe it.
Chills.
All the time, chills. Just watching them work and
seeing them grow from.
Yeah, seeing them grow from, a bar band to being major superstars. Mm-hmm. And it's so sad that we lost them.
Right.
Because I know they would have continued making great music.
They would have. They
would have, definitely. I firmly believe that because they were dedicated musicians.
And they went on, the remaining members went on to become Rossington Collins Band, right, which I love. And I think they're an amazing band. Mm-hmm. And they didn't do a lot more after the one album, I believe.
Right. And his brother, Ronnie's brother, Johnny, became the new lead singer for the tribute band to Lynyrd Skynyrd. And they did a great job.
He did good.
He did a great job.
They were all incredibly talented.
Yeah, the whole band was. And so Lynyrd Skynyrd lives on. I'm not sure if they're still touring or not, to be honest with you, but it was in giving respect to his brother who died in the plane. Mm-hmm. And they actually look pretty similar.
Right.
Which is pretty strange, but I don't think I'll ever get over some of these things I talk about, but this was a tough one. Mm-hmm. God, when you worked with a band you loved and then you're told they just died in a plane crash. Mm-hmm. It's a memory that'll haunt you.
And I'm sure the first thing that went through your mind was I was on that plane with them at several times.
Yeah, I was on that plane with them, and that was another thought that raced through my head right away.
I'm sure.
Yeah, but,
I'm sure.
To put it in respect, they were good Southern boys, just had a flair for fight.
They had a flair for fun, it sounds like. I mean, and that was their idea of fun.
Yeah, that was fun. I think, John Mellencamp used to go into a bar and say, he'd get up next to the biggest guy there was, and sit next to him and say, "You want to go out and fight?" And the guy would say, "Yeah, I'll beat your ass." So Mellencamp would go out in the parking lot, start fighting the guy. He said, "I got my ass kicked every time."
Really?
Yeah, but nothing to do really with Lynyrd Skynyrd, but
Southern things.
Yeah. And even though he was Midwestern, but he always said, "I always got my ass beat. I always got it beat." But why would they do that? Well, I don't know. I don't understand it.
The tribute band for Lynyrd Skynyrd is still touring, and they're headlining the Sharp Dressed Simple Man tour with ZZ Top, and they go across the southern states, and it began on March 8th in 2024 in Savannah, Georgia, and it will end on September 22nd, 2024 in Ridgefield, Washington, and that was some great research there by my partner in crime.
You got a good researcher.
I do. He's well paid. And So going back to that, they are still touring, and they're still doing their thing.
Yeah, and fans love them for the most part. I've never heard anybody put a knock on them, but they did a good job of recreating Lynyrd Skynyrd.
Right.
And then for a while, a couple members of the band, the original band, were playing with them, but they went on to pass away. But they had multiple injuries in that crash. It was a horrible, horrible crash.
And we don't want to end on a sad note. And we are so happy that you were one of the, catalysts in helping them become the band that they became. But, they were so talented, it was inevitable. But you were so lucky to be part of that.
Yeah, I was absolutely lucky. And I think a lot of my life is like that, serendipitously meeting bands and going to fight for them and work for them and trying to help them out.
Not physically fight.
No, no, no. I never fought with them. They never even thought about hitting me.
Yeah, but you went to the mats, as they say.
I did. I went. I mean, the whole MCA staff did, but I mean, they didn't like a lot of people.
Well, that's going to wrap it up on this episode of Hidden History of Rock and Roll. Thanks, Jon, for joining me today, live and in person. In Cambria, California.
Thank you, Cambria. I want to say one thing before we go. This Hidden History of Rock and Roll podcast is incredible.
Thank you.
And I hope many of you sign up and join it to be a Patreon, because Tiffany has a lot of work that she does. She has to buy equipment just to have people edit the show. And you can become a Patreon by just going on her website. And if you can afford $5 a month, $10 a month, it'll help keep this thing going, because she is preserving the history of rock and roll.
Yes.
And this will be around for years.
Yeah.
Because if the stories aren't told that we know, they'll never be told.
They will go with them.
Yes,
when
exactly.
They go.
And I think that's just incredible. And I hope you fans out there realize how important these shows are.
Yeah.
I mean, the Steve Meyer show was great. Paul Rappaport was fantastic. And I know you got others lined up. But anyway, fans, go to Hidden History of Rock and Roll's website.
Thank you.
Become a Patreon.
Become a Patreon member.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much. And thanks for joining me on Hidden History of Rock and Roll. You can find me on Spotify, Amazon, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, and Patreon, like Jon Scott just said. Become a friend of the show and get your questions answered by our next guest. Thanks so much for joining me, and have a rockin' day.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed the latest installment of the Hidden History of Rock and Roll. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on all the podcast platforms. Thanks for listening to the Hidden History of Rock and Roll with your host, Tiffany Scott.